declare our right on this earth, human being, to be given the rights of a human being in this society, on this earth, in this day, which we intend to bring into existence by any means necessary.
Welcome everybody. Now you can't see me. We got to figure out how to move the flyer. Welcome everybody to the, oh my goodness, this is October. This is the 10th installment. I think we may have missed one. Revolutionary Fourth Sundays for the Centennial of Malcolm X. My name is Zaid Muhammad. I see Dashawn Farrar just gave us a hotep from wherever Dashawn is out there in the world. We see you, Dashawn. We have an incredible conversation that we're going to do today. This is very much an in-house conversation tonight. In that, we're going to feature our own Charles Asukile Mitchell, who was a part of that delegation that went to Grenada in May, just before May 19th. A delegation of folks from the States actually got to go down to where Malcolm was born. And I don't know why I'm trying to move this thing. And got to build with Malcolm. There's a whole lot of Malcolm surviving family that's very much in Grenada. I'm learning about a lot of his family that's in the Midwest, where Malcolm was born, and where the Littles tried to raise their children before the state intervened, right? And there are some that are still in Canada. But Charles got to go on that trip with a lot of folks. It was led by IBW, the International Black World 21st Century, led by Ron Daniels, Elder Ron Daniels. And they included folks like, who was supposed to be our guest tonight, Melina Abdullah of Black Lives Matter Grassroots, Onifa Bendele, Movement for Black Lives, and who's also a daughter of the New African Independence Movement, and a host of others. A lot of folks went down on that delegation. Kim Poole is a young voice we tried to pull into this conversation. We haven't been able to get Kim. Kim was probably the youngest on that delegation, and several others. It was a powerful gathering for all to behold, and very meaningful for all to behold. And we're looking forward to jumping into this conversation. We should back up and just let you know of some things that, there we go. I don't know if it's important to see my face so much, but when our guests come on, for sure indeed it will be. We've got a lot going on as we move into November, and on the Jersey side of the work, we've been doing work in Jersey as well as in New York in this last 2 years or so. We will be co-hosting a community-based tribute to none other than Osada Olugbada Shakur that will take place on November 15th. The details are still being worked out on that, so I'm not going to add more to that until we work those out. We do want everybody to hold the date for that gathering. It is definitely going to happen. So please look forward to that. I want to acknowledge just in recent weeks, some other things that we've done, and just really since May. I want to acknowledge the anthology archives down in Lower Manhattan. Young scholar Yasmina Price and Rosemary Mealy and I, and several talkbacks on some a week of films that she did, that she archived there, and we got to meet Brother Leonard Liebert Bethune, who did the film Malcolm X, World Revolution. It's a good film that came out of Jamaica that we used to use for PE back in the 70s and the 80s. Short film, but if you can use it, it's an excellent PE tool. And it's really just Malcolm sitting down and talking shop with young activists when he was traveling abroad. So those kind of gatherings. We had the book signing with Kahindi Andrews, a young Caribbean bred scholar who's based in London. No one can give you your freedom. Good book by that young brother who's across the big pond, but also a fruit of the Caribbean roots of the Black radical tradition, which is something we want to pinpoint today, because we can't talk about uh, Malcolm's mother and her Grenadian roots without talking about the world from which she sprang, right? So we will definitely get into some of that this evening as well, and of course absolutely have to do a spotlight for two books before the year ends, and that is Memories of a Meeting when Malcolm met Fidel. Epic moment is September 19th, 1960. No accident in history that it took place at the top of the 1960s. That solidarity has been huge for all involved on all sides. And of course, one of its maximum expressions of that was its welcoming of freedom fighters like Asada from harm in these states. Asada lived more years in Cuba than she did here in the United States by virtue of the welcoming arms of the Cuban Revolution. Must thank Cuba eternally for that, and of course its bold contributions to the African world. Right? That's Cuba is in the Caribbean. And finally, the book that's really not, it's kind of falling under the radar. It's Mumia Abu Jamal's last book, and I'll do Mumia will be our spotlight on political prisoners, and I'll come to him in just a moment. Beneath the Mountain, that he co-edited with Jennifer Black, and it's actually a prison reader on folks who have been locked up by the United States government for their politics over a over a century and a half, and of course that includes Malcolm, it includes a bunch of Mumia's comrades too. So that's a lot that we want to try and get done. Uh, there's a lot that we want to get done during the next year. We apologize that we have not. We're still struggling with a banking issue. Our chairman, I'm sorry, our treasurer, Mike Ferguson, who might pop in tonight, is trying to resolve that with one of our board members who was good at those kind of things, Yasmin Sutton, who's also one of the founders of the National Alumni Association of the Black Panther Party. As soon as we get that resolved, we're going to get back and give some real stuff on the New York side, like the resuming of our dinner and naming it after its conceptualizer, its founding mother, Mama Ayalua Ferguson. We are not letting that go. We're going to bring that back and focus on those remaining political prisoners who we've been supporting to the hilt, and now at a very critical time in each of their lives. Imam Jamil Abdullah El Amin, terminal cancer, trying to clear his name. Only two political prisoners from our recent struggle have gotten out with their names cleared. Geronimo Pratt and Deruba Ben Wahad. Everybody else had to serve their time. Kamal Siddiqui. We cannot talk about Asada without talking about the father of her child and her comrade who went to prison because he refused to collaborate with the FBI to set Asada up. Kamal Siddiqui has had a bid for parole, framed by the same judge that oversaw the framing of Mumia Abu Jamal. Please pay attention to all the things that we're going to be doing for Kamal Siddiqui, right? And then, of course, Mumia himself. We've actually just been to the Department of Corrections and to Mumia's prison itself, Mahanoy, in Pennsylvania, to fight with the prison system for refusing to or withholding the medical treatment that almost left him blind. Well, because of that pressure, it's one of those procedures was just done and Mumia regained his sight. But there are two other procedures that's supposed to happen that we're still turning on that pressure. And of course, Mumia took an L in the appellate courts that he should not have taken. So we have to do more on the public front, on the streets, to drive a fresh re-entry into the courts to push for his freedom. And that will include what we're calling the Long March for Freedom for Mumia that will take place at the end of November and that will wind up on the anniversary of his captivity of just December 9th, where a bunch of us are literally going to march from Philadelphia to State Correctional Institute in Mahanoy, Pennsylvania. It is a 103-mile march in the spirit of us doing long marches, right? Opal Lee, one of the founders and mothers of the mother of Juneteenth, did a long march from Texas to Washington, right? And a comrade named Lawrence Ham right here in New Jersey did a long march from Newark all the way down to Trenton, New Jersey, around police brutality. It's not the kind of thing that's done regularly, because it takes a whole lot to do and it takes a whole lot of those who do it, but it is definitely in the mix and something that will be happening and something that yours truly will definitely be participating in. So that's on the front of our political prisoners. So this is an in-house conversation tonight. I'm very excited for that because we have our first board member and one of our long-standing members, right? And usually we have our guests are usually outside of our circle, but this is an in-house conversation. We're gonna have a family shop talk about this great black woman that gave birth to Malcolm in the tradition from which they both spring, and why it's important to appreciate all of that. Malcolm didn't come out of the sky. He came from the womb of a black woman. And that particular black woman was a black woman on fire for the liberation of African people worldwide, as she was absolutely a dyed in the wool Garveyite and paid, just like our political prisoners do time, paying the price for our freedom, locked up in a mental health institution in Kalamazoo, Michigan for almost 26 years, paying the price for not being capitulating the state forces trying to break up her family and punish her for her political beliefs. She lived a good 20 years after that. Yes, she did. The long distance legs are very much in the biology of Malcolm's family on both sides. And she was an amazing black woman who needs to be appreciated. And of course, we need to appreciate the black radical tradition from which Malcolm springs, and how it exploded by virtue of his own unique contribution. Baba James Small is with us tonight. Just turned 80 years young, long distance running elder, and our genuine warrior scholar who we greatly appreciate. I want to say happy birthday again for Rahakuza Liwa, the Baba James Small, and Baba Charles Asukile Mitchell, our face in New York, and who went on that profound delegation, that sojourn, that pilgrimage of hope, as it was called, that went to Grenada to give us a firsthand look see at what that looked like, what that felt like, and what that should come to mean for those of us who are about this thing called freedom. I will do a brief libation statement now just to get us going. I'm going to call on the four directions: the north, the south, the east, the west. Ibaye, Ashe, Ibaye, Ashe, Ibaye, Ashe, Ibaye, Ashe. Leaning on our new ancestor who was Asada Olugbala Shakur, I'm going to call on the Orisha Oya. 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 Storm of transformation. We trying to change the world and definitely trying to change ours, right? And sometimes it's going to be messy and sometimes it's going to be clean, but we got to make it happen. And we need to be unapologetic with our force moving forward to make that happen. So, in the spirit of the Orisha Oya, that centered an incredible film on Asada called Eyes of the Rainbow, we're going to call on the Orisha Oya for transformation. May we be the forces necessary individually and collectively to be the difference we need to see and make, right? We call on her mother, Doris Johnson, who I was proud to know both of them very well, her grandmother, her profoundly spiritual and intuitive grandmother who had that close voice with the ancestors that Asada used to always lift up. Her name was Lula Hill, in the spirit of those freemans. Asada was a freeman, right? Those folks who came out of the bowels of the slave plantations and actually built some things, fought those crazy white folks in Wilmington, Delaware, in spite of that overthrow of those last wing of black reps in that state formation, fought for their land and held on to it for as long as they could. Solid comes from real stock. And on Malcolm's side, we now know who the African ancestors on both sides of the family. Ronell laid out that it was an ancestor from Mali who wound up in South Carolina named Ajar. We now know that on Malcolm's mama's side, Jupiter and Mary Jane Langdon, who came from Nigeria as indentured servants, not as enslaved people. So Malcolm's got DNA from Mali and Nigeria, and he was indeed an Omawali in the fullest sense of the word if you pull all of this together. With his African ancestry, we say Ibaye Ashe, Ibaye Ashe, Ibaye Ashe, for his incredible mother who will be the source of this conversation today. Mary Louise Langdon Norton Little, proud Garveyite mother who went through hell standing up for her family and for her leader, Mr. Garvey himself. We say Ibaye Ashe, Ibaye Ashe, Ibaye Ashe, Ibaye Ashe. And we'll add with two more women who are absolutely essential to the life, legs, and legacy of Malcolm X. His Queen Betty Bahia Shabazz and his big sister Ella Little Collins. All indispensable to this man doing the great work that he did. But then we say Ibaye Ashe, Ibaye Ashe, Ibaye Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. So for the North, the South, the East, and West, we say it is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love each other and support each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. Right? Let me thank Rafisa Shahabuddin, who's in the background helping us on the tech front, right? And doing what she does and has been an important and appreciative part of what we've been doing recently in this space. Teacher of the Year, Shabazz High School in Newark, New Jersey. We're glad and proud and appreciative to have Rafisa with us. And Baba James has now joined us. We're going to start with Baba James and give us the long walk, the long look. James shared a profound picture. I mean, I literally got emotional when you shared it, sir. A profound picture of you and Dr. Betty in Grenada, right? And at the time of that trip, we did not know at that time, of course, those will be the last few weeks of Dr. Betty being with us on this earth. Just weeks later, she would be fighting for her life, literally walking through fire. And I'm making it plain, trying to save her grandson from that fire that burned her severely and that ultimately took her to the land of the ancestors, right? And so we wanted to take a full stock of these Grenadian roots and these Caribbean roots that help shape and make the man who we call Malcolm. Baba James, welcome back.
Yes, sir, Baba Zaid. It's good to be back.
Yes, sir. So why don't you take us on that long walk on what the Grenadian and Caribbean roots of Malcolm's legacy means and should be appreciated for?
Well, like any other part of the African world, and particularly in the Americas, where we were kidnapped and brought over here and had to fight, literally still in a 500-year plus war. Some people seem to think the war has ended, but the war has not ended. The enemy is the same. His tactics have changed. His weapons have changed. But we are at war with the same enemy. And one of the places that the enemy conquered was an island called Grenada, the Grenadines. That was a series of islands that had you had Petty St. Vincent, you had some other neighboring islands that had a history of resistance against the colonizers. I mean, we know that whole concept when we think of St. Vincent, even before Sister Louise was born in the Grenadines, you got to think of the resistance of the people that we call the Garifuna, who had fought for more than 100+ years against the British and the others, and were moving from island to island in order to carry on their fight. And the people of Grenada and the people of this big offshore island, Carriacou, these are people who have been resisting tyranny from its inception by the Spanish, by the British, And even after the revolution in Haiti was betrayed and Dessalines was killed, many of those people went to Grenada and went to Carriacou to escape the reactionaries that had taken over the government in Haiti and destroyed the progress of the Haitian Revolution. So Grenada historically was a fertile ground of Black resistance, of Black African peoples' retention. When I went there for the first time a few years before I went with Sister Betty, I had gone to Grenada twice before and primarily spent my time on Carriacou, one of the big offshore islands. And the people were still speaking African language. We could call them the African Creole. But if you understood Akan, the Akan language, if you understood Twi, you would understand the language of the people of Grenada. And they call their language Carriacou. I heard them speaking the first night I was there. And I go, like, oh, y'all from Ghana. So I tried my little broken Twi, and they were surprised that I could speak Carriacou. So there was a great cultural and historical and ethnic retention in that population. So it's easy to see Louise's mother and grandmother and grandfather and father being a part of a resistance against slavery, a resistance against colonialism. And so that became a culture that this young lady was raised in. And her family, before her migrating to Canada, and where a lot of the people from Grenada would migrate over time, her family was very much a part of what we would call today the African-centered movement in that part of the world. So she wasn't a novice when she meets Malcolm's father at a conference, I think around 1918, 1919 at a conference. I think it was in Montreal.
Yes, sir.
And so they bonded immediately, and I think they moved to Philadelphia initially and then into the Midwest, Omaha, where she became the secretary of the UNIA chapter there, as well as one of the publishers of its newsletters. So she wasn't a silent partner of an activist husband. She was a participating revolutionary partner in the struggle. And of course, her husband would be killed less than a decade later. And she would be left to fight the system in that area after moving around, of course, in the Midwest, until they decided they had no legal way to bring her to prison through the courts. So they used something that they had always used against us back in those days. The state would take control of your life by declaring you mentally insane or mentally incompetent. And then the state would use that as a pretext to imprison you in a mental hospital. Getting out of a mental hospital was much harder than getting out of the penitentiary. A lot of people don't know that, because when you go into mental hospital, you're not there. You can't appeal to any courts to get you out. It's the governor, it's the state itself that is in control of your life, almost on a personal level. And I think she spent close to 25 years incarcerated. And people need to understand she was incarcerated. They say, she had a nervous breakdown. No. She was under a lot of stress because the state put her under a lot of stress, trying to take her children away, trying to force her on welfare. She did not want to be on welfare. She wanted to take care of herself. She had a land and she planted her own food, and the children hunted animals like everyone in those days who lived in the rural area did. And they wanted to put her under their control. And that means get you on welfare and have social service intervene with your children. And when she refused to allow for that process to destroy her family, they incarcerated her.
That's right.
And so Malcolm and the family, the brothers and the sisters, were able to get her out 25 years later. And she lived the rest of her life out with her family, her children and grandchildren in Michigan. So the impact, though, she had on her children was extraordinary. We know Malcolm's life very well, but her son Wilfred was a minister in the Nation of Islam. Her son Filbert was a minister in the Nation of Islam. Her son Reginald was a minister in the Nation of Islam. And her other children all was a part of the nation. I think maybe one, maybe Robert wasn't, but I'm not sure of that. But at that time, we can think of the Nation of Islam as we do now because of the conflict with Malcolm. But at that point, the Nation of Islam was then the most revolutionary organization in the country.
Indeed.
You know,
It was.
and people need to understand that it wasn't a pariah to the Black community. At that time, the UNA had been broken, and many of its members became a part of what became the Lost Foundation of Islam in the West, or we know as the Black Muslims, or the Nation of Islam. And so it was the revolutionary thrust and force in the country. And her entire family became a part of that instrument, which tells you something about her mind, and how she raised those children and infused in those children those values of resistance and rebellion.
Totally. And I think of Wilfred explaining. Wilfred, of course, was the big brother of the family,
right?
And the first to really go in deep.
Yes.
And he used to say, it was just like being in the Garvey movement all over again, in terms of their own intro and their own contribution. I forget who did it in their scholarship, but there is somebody wrote a good essay on the little family contribution to the growth of Malcolm, building on what Malcolm did, of course. But that whole area, that Michigan area, where Wilfred and Filbert played very important roles in the stabilizing of those temples in Michigan, and were steady forces for a long time in the nation. Is indeed, and we need to appreciate the continuum of struggle that from Garvey to the Nation of Islam, and what became out of the various streams of struggle, with Malcolm, of course, when he moved on. Mr. Muhammad himself and his wife Clara Muhammad were Garveyites, right? That whole notion of building the structure that became the Nation of Islam, that the nation became famous for, comes straight out of the UNIA, and both its forerunners, meaning Elijah Muhammad and Clara Muhammad, both were key in that. In fact, it was Clara, who never really gets the credit that she deserves within the nation, who insisted on the development of what became the University of Islam, schooling of Muslim children, aside from public schooling and all of its segregated baggage that we know public education to be in this country, as it is and as it was. So that continuity is huge. Now remind us now move us forward a little more forward, because you tell us about, when you went with Dr. Betty.
Yes, sir. There was an organization led by the young man who's now the city, is he called the city advocate in New York? What's his name?
Community.
What's the community advocate for New York?
Public. Are you talking about Jemani Williams?
Jemani, right. Jemani was just a student then. It was his organization that organized it, along with the then elected official who is from Grenada. He's from Queens and Brooklyn, a congressman in D.C. And it's been so long after that. He's still very active, very high ranking in the foreign service of the U.S. Congress now. But they had set this up and asked me to come along. And so when you see Betty and I standing there, she was surprised. She got off the plane. Then you had to walk on the tarmac. And she sees me walking out to meet her with this bouquet of flowers. And he goes like, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "I'm here meeting you with a bouquet of flowers." Right. And so from there, we went on lectures, at different places in the islands, doing different radio shows together at the radio station in Grenada. And some of us went over to Carriacou. Sister Betty was supposed to go over to Carriacou, but she couldn't get over to Carriacou because of the situation with flights and stuff. But some of us did go over there as well. But the big event was the celebration and the marketplace near the home of Louise's family in Grenada. We had an outdoor rally, and some local politicians spoke, and then Dr. Shabazz and myself. And to tell the people about their son, Malcolm, to tell them about Louise's work when she came to America, and to have them tell us about the family work struggling there, and about Louise as a child growing up in that space. And so, like you said, this was it was like a couple of months before she passed. And we came back here to the States. I think we met twice, before her passing. And she was, a lot of people that know Sister Betty, I got to speak about Sister. Sister Betty was one of the most revolutionary sisters
Yes, sir.
you could bump into. But she didn't do it like she shut me down in Grenada. When I got to speak, she called me over. She said, let me tell you something. Because I was there trying to be like Asukile. I'm being the young, hard radical, right? He hears me. And Sister Betty called me to the side after I got to speaking. He said, you know what I told Malcolm? When you rile up the enemy like that and you're not prepared to destroy them when they come, you're in trouble. So be careful how you rile the enemy. So learn to manage your speech so you can get the message to the people without endangering the ones you're giving the message to. I didn't quite understand it at first. I thought she just didn't like me being so radical. And I realized over time and learned to develop a teaching method where I could give you the information I wanted you to get, and even the enemy would miss it. But she never backed down from any challenge. And she respected Sister Louisa. She knew more about her than anybody living at that time other than her family. She knew more about her than the family in Grenada because they didn't know about her life in America, really. So Betty being the wife of Haj Malik al-Shabazz, Malcolm X, he had shared so much about his mother, about the things the mother had told him about the family in the Caribbean, that she was the encyclopedia on Louisa Little at that time. And just an extraordinary lady. She was a member of the NACP. She didn't get caught up in the contradictions that some of us get caught up in the ideological mind splitting some of us get caught up in. She worked with any element in the struggle that was working for freedom, whether they were Marxists, whether they were nationalists, whether they were religious, whether they were quote unquote civil rights. She worked with anyone as long as they worked for freedom and as long as they maintained the integrity and the dignity of the race. She didn't play in that way. And she wasn't afraid of anything. That was a brave woman.
Yeah,
she was not afraid. There was a time, I think we were in Uganda together for the 8-pack, and Museveni wanted to name this boulevard after Malcolm. It's going to be in Kampala. It's going to be Malcolm X Boulevard. So I was with Sister Shabazz trying to pretend I was security. Of course, they had all the big-time security, but she wanted me with her. And so we went to this square, and the government had put a chain link fence around where the ceremony was going to take place, naming the boulevard. And Sister Betty went to the president and said, I can't participate in the ceremony. She said it right there. And he's looking kind of like weird, waiting for his ministers and them to say something. And so they step up to Sister Betty to find out why. She said, because you fenced the people out. She says, I'm not going to stand behind a fence having a ceremony to name a street for my husband while the people of Kampala is fenced out. And then she said, come here, Brother Small. And she took me up to the corner and made me start breaking down the fence. And once I started taking down the fence, of course, the soldiers and the security people, they came in and took this fence down so that the people could come in and see the wife of his Haj Malik al-Shabazz, Malcolm X, named this boulevard in Kampala, Uganda, after her husband. And on that same visit, at the conference, she had to leave the day before the conference was over. So she and Viola Plummer wrote a memorandum that they had me deliver orally to the convention that Malcolm should be named formally a Pan-Africanist and a revolutionary.
Absolutely.
A revolutionary Pan-Africanist.
Mm-hmm.
And the vote came 100%, including Muammar Gaddafi, who was voting by video, that should be the case.
Where is that now? Student scholars. I'm asking this for student scholars.
Mm-hmm.
Where can somebody find that resolution?
It's a part of the archives of the government of Uganda.
Wow.
They hosted that conference, the APAC, and that's when, in the same year, it was the same year because 2 days later the massacre started in Rwanda.
That's 94.
Right, and so we were still in Uganda. Lambe led our delegation, and we were actually sitting with Paul Kagame, him and Lambe, having a conversation. We all having lunch together when the word came about the killing of the two presidents.
Can't make that.
And, but back to Sister Betty. Again, we were in Africa together, and then we'll come back to Sister Louise. But we're in Africa together for the naming of the Nkrumah Memorial that the whole world goes to see today in the great, beautiful Nkrumah Memorial Park in the Presidential Library. Well, when the body was moved from his home village and entombed in that place, Sister Betty was the keynote speaker on behalf of the diaspora.
Wow.
And she was accompanied by me and Dr. Leonard Jeffries at the time, and there was others. Just an extraordinary lady. She knew when, how to represent her people. And she always took care of me. I was a little underling. And I remember at the hotel in Kampala, I was staying on the floor with what you would say the ordinary people, which was cool. I didn't think of it as ordinary. So I come back to my room one afternoon after having done some stuff that the ambassador sent me to do, and I asked for my keys. And I told him my room number, and the guy said, we don't have a room, any keys for anybody in that name for that room. So I said, but I slept there last night. And so they said, well, what's your name again? He said, oh, you've been moved up to the presidential floors. And I go like, well, how you just moved me? So, oh, Dr. Shabazz said that's what she wanted you to stay. So she just went behind my back and said, move Brother Small up there.
Right.
So I had to walk through all the security every day and do the AK-47 on the stairwell to get to my room. But that's the way she was. She was like, Sister Shabazz is like straight ahead. Another time we're over in Brooklyn, they were naming the street for Malcolm X. Somebody put a picture up lately showing a hole in the sign with Sonny Bubadika and some others.
Yes.
Well, she was in particular in that march that day. She was up in her office and she sees this out of the window, and the police is blocking Bubadika and them. And she comes down and made herself the head of that march. Of course, the Red Sea opened. Nobody's going to mess with Malcolm X's wife. So when Dr. Shabazz, somebody must have whispered somebody, and the police opened up and let Sonny and them continue the march. Because she came down and she became a part of it. She was strong like that. She was very clear on what she wanted to do. She'd go to the Black Caucus in Albany every year. And after the caucus, she would stay for Monday and Tuesday because that's when the NAACP had their main meeting. So my auntie was the treasurer of the NAACP. So I'd always stay just to help her with her stuff. And so me and Sister Betty would always have breakfast together every Monday morning after the caucus ended. So we got to know each other intimately. Because at first she wasn't too close to me because I was close with Ellen. I was in OAU. And it took us some time. There was an occasion where we actually we started breakfast meeting in the morning at 9. And we are still meeting at 5 o'clock. So she wanted to make sure, well, who is this Negro? Let me make sure I get to know him. Let me find out what he is, So that was her way of vetting me, But, like May 19th, you would see her. She'd be in Jersey during the day while we were out at the grave at the school named for Malcolm. The day before that, she's in Detroit at a school named before Malcolm. The day before that, she's another part of home. And she would land on the late afternoon of May 19th at the church where Malcolm was buried on 147th and Amsterdam Avenue with Ozzie Davis and others and myself.
I want to shout out Karen Taylor.
Yes.
Karen has this formation called While We Are Still Here.
Mm-hmm.
It's a cultural 501c3 that is literally putting up historical markers all over important historical sites in Harlem
Hmm.
as an anti-gentrification resistance kind of tool. And the
Hmm.
one that's up next, there's some construction going on around by that church right now.
That church was,
But
yeah.
that's the next marker that's supposed to go up for the church where Malcolm's funeral was taking place.
Well, share my information with Sister. Let her get. I'll be there to help them.
Absolutely, absolutely. We all gonna be there to help her.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now
And
now I'm gonna tell you something. Now, the first person that I really started hearing talking about uh Mama Louisa was the late Jan Carew.
uh-huh.
Out of Guyana, right? Is that same Caribbean triangle, you
Right.
know, and ultimately did that book Ghosts in Our Blood, and I mean, maybe out of print. We need to really look at that too. There's a young brother, and I forget where he's teaching at, but Eric McDuffie. I was looking at an article that he did
Mhm.
on Mama Louisa just recently. If you had to, and what you laid out on Betty, that's stuff that people don't know about Betty.
Right.
In terms
Oh,
of
a
the
lot.
state of scholarship on Malcolm's broader legacy, Malcolm, his mother, his queen.
Mhm.
What are some of the holes that still need to be filled in your estimation?
Well, one to, especially with Sister Louisa, to go back to Omaha, right? When she is the secretary of the chapter. That means you making sure all the meeting stuff is going on. You making sure people are supposed to get to the meeting. You making sure the minutes are distributed where it's supposed to be distributed. You making sure the leadership know they're supposed to be in place. People don't understand. When you're the secretary of the organization, you're next to the president of the organization.
You working?
And so there she was. Her husband at this time had been assassinated. No, he was still alive. Just shortly before he gets assassinated. And here's this woman, a leader in one of the main Garveyite organization outside of the critical East Coast. In the center, what is that time, Omaha, Nebraska, is the center of the Midwest Black population.
Right. Yeah, how about that?
And this is the time where this was a hotbed of the Ku Klux Klan,
Yes, sir.
a hotbed of the Red Shirts, a hotbed of the Black Legions, which was just clans by other names, terrorist organizations that would attack anybody that was trying to bring forth some kind of Black organization, some kind of a Black understanding and protection, a Black building in their community. And she was one of the leaders, not a sideline, not someone that came to meetings on Sunday. She was one of the leaders of the organization that made the decisions of what do we do next. In the same way her son would become a minister and a leader in the Nation of Islam years later. And the proof of her work is just the all of her children. Philbert actually ran 2 temples of the nation at one time.
How about
Okay.
that?
2 temples. Wilford was just an extraordinary minister, but he's an extraordinary advisor to the messenger. You understand? Reginald is a firebrand in opening up temples on the East Coast. He's the one that would bring his brother Malcolm in. But his sister Hilda is in the nation. Ella is in the nation. All of this family is in the Nation of Islam, and it's mainly due to this woman's teaching.
Yes.
Of course, her husband as well, but her husband leaves when these children were just babies. She's the one that instilled this in them. All of your children, it's usually once, I'm over here in the Jehovah's Witness, I'm over here in this. No. All of your children went to Black. 7 of them.
Yeah, that's huge.
And then they brought other family members in.
Right.
Right. Because I think it was Wilford and Philbert that brought Ella in. Well, Malcolm finally got her to do the step over, but she was working and supporting Philbert and them before Malcolm got her to walk in. And Ella was open one of the first daycare centers for the Nation of Islam up in Boston under Malcolm's leadership. So all of this is Louisa. These are her cubs, that is carrying on this work that her consciousness produced. Because she's taken away, like the father's taken away early, she's also taken away from those children very early. But she had that time to move them from one space to another space, and no one could turn that around.
Right. Right. And history backs that up. The historical record clearly backs that up. Now I want to bring brother Charles into this because Charles actually got to make that
Yes.
sojourn. Charles, tell us about the pilgrimage of hope that you participated in. Some of the folks that were with you. And Charles was a scene stealer. IBW has a YouTube of the main gathering. It's about 2.5 hours where everybody spoke and whatnot. Charles grabs two of the children,
Right.
right, and brings them up, two of the babies. This is Malcolm's bloodline, right, and put them in the program. And he does that whenever we do things. When there are children around, Charles always gets hold of them, right? It's one of our natural teachers. Like, a bunch of us ain't in classrooms where we need to be, right? But Charles was a scene stealer. We were so proud of Charles when he made that move like that, bringing those children into the space in a meaningful way, so that it becomes more a part of their memory, right? Than just, old heads talking about some stuff and we just got to wait before we can eat for them to finish talking. Come on in, brother Asukile. Tell us about that trip you went on.
So, Dr. Ron Daniels gave me a call, said, oh, first of all, before I go any further, let me just, can you all hear me first of all?
You fine.
Yeah.
You're good.
Yeah.
You're fine.
All right. One birthday you didn't give a shout out, and happy birthday, Baba. I didn't get a
Thank you,
chance
Brother
to call you
Asukile.
since your birthday.
Yes.
But we also have a birthday within the ranks of MXCC.
That's right.
Our beloved brother Michael Ferguson. So we definitely want to give
Our
him
treasurer.
Happy birthday, Michael.
happy belated shout out. The son of course, Ealua Ferguson and Herman Ferguson, or the stepson of Ealua, which is still a son in our tradition, so it don't really matter.
So we don't use the step in our
Yeah.
conversation.
That's right. That's right.
But I was able to take advantage of this, Dr. Rondell. He gave me a call last year. They had another exploratory trip where they were making connections with the family of Louise. And something happened last minute, and that wasn't able to happen. Somebody that, had a higher priority, I guess you could say, needed to go. So he told me the next time, and then the next time turned out to be this year. And so we went there just before our annual pilgrimage, the week before actually, and it was an amazing trip. If you could share my screen, you could see the picture. This is one of the young people that you were talking about, direct descendant of Louise Helen Langdon Little Norton and his mother. And I pulled them up because I wanted them to understand that all of this work that she did, all of the work that we are doing is for them, for their future, to provide an opportunity for them that we may not necessarily have had, and for us to be free, and that's the most important part for me. And so I said to them when I had him and another young sister who was not in this, she was a student that came as part of a student group.
Okay.
I said that whatever you do, make sure that you are using those tools and skills that you acquire for the freedom and liberation of our people. You can have your particular interest and fields that you want to go to, but make sure that whatever you do, you use it to make an impact for the freedom of our people. And I think that's why, that's one of the things rather that we have to put into our children. We have to give them an understanding that you are not just about you, you are about your family and your people, and the things that you do will affect, will hold back, will deter the freedom of our peoples as African peoples worldwide. And so I always try to reach out to young people to make this real to them, because a lot of times you see them at these events, a mother or a grandmother or somebody may have dragged them to it, but very, very rarely do I actually see them fully engaged and excited about what's going on. They're kind of there and, playing with their phones or whatever they do these days. And so we have to pull them into these activities, make them an active part of these activities, and give them an understanding of why this is going on and why it's pertinent to their lives, not just because granny or mommy or somebody brought me to it. So this placard that you see in the background, this is actually one of the reasons, partially reason, aside from making a deeper connection. This was donated by the Institute for the Black World and the coalition to mark the spot where the home where Louise grew up is the house is no longer there, but the family still retains the property. And so the hope is that eventually there'll be not just a museum, but a community center that can engage the neighboring community and educate them in the tradition in which she was educated. Uh, when you said I was still in the show, I thought you were talking about what I said, because some folks are upset at me. They said I was uh, um, talking about the nation. Well, I had to make clear that many of the things that Malcolm talked about when he was a member of the nation, I mean, God bless the spirit of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and so forth. But some of the things that Malcolm talked about were clearly inculcated in him by his parents.
That's correct.
His mother, not the Nation of Islam. We could thank them for elevating him and giving him a national platform to help his people, but we have to be clear that many of the things that he talked about were not part of the regular Nation of Islam dialogue, and so that's Malcolm's mother is responsible for that primarily. And so when we talk about her, we need to talk about her legacy as Brother Small so beautifully laid out, her
Yes.
connection with the UNIA ACL and her work and her family's tradition of education and excellence and freedom fighting. So she's not just the mother of Malcolm X. She has her own legacy in her own right. If she never had children, she would have her own legacy still to stand on. It's important that she was his mother because we wouldn't have the Malcolm X that we know of if it wasn't for her. So I wanted to make sure that that was clear when I got up to speak at this session. But aside from that session, we also were able to now stop screen sharing. We also were able to visit the home of the sister of Maurice Bishop, and that was
You beat me to that. I'm glad you raised that. Go ahead. Keep going.
that was a revelatory experience, and we were there with Dr. Julius Garvey, George Frazier, some of our brothers and sisters from neighboring Trinidad and Tobago, which I'm told is only 2 hours or less boat ride away. It's like a half hour away by plane. So we had an international. We have brothers and sisters from Nigeria, of course, from here. The other islands other islands and nations that are close by us, aside from Trinidad and Tobago. But it was important that we made that connection with the family and the legacy of Maurice Bishop, and we got to hear from her, from a young man that worked. Well, he's not so young now, but at the time he was a young man that worked security and was allowed through his connection to Maurice Bishop's government to go into what was probably at that time the initial program that we have this program with the doctors, the doctor training in Cuba, and most of us know that through IFCO, Pastors for Peace on this side. But I'm imagining because of the timeline that this was probably being established about the time that Maurice Bishop, government was in effect, and this young man was able through the government to go to school in Cuba to be educated for medicine. And when he came back, because of his connection with Maurice Bishop, now this is after Bishop was assassinated, the government that was in effect wouldn't give him the credentials necessary to practice medicine on the island, which was the whole purpose of him going to Cuba, with others in the Caribbean. Cuba, we have to give a shout out to Cuba. God bless the people of Cuba, and may God and the ancestors protect Cuba and thank them. I want to thank Cubans personally, the Cuban government personally, as a member of the Malcolm X Commemoration Committee, for giving our elder and our ancestor, Assata Shakur, space in which she could live as a free person. And I want to thank them for doing that on our behalf as the so-called African American, African diaspora. But we have to look deeper at the connections that we have across this world. We have to look deeper on how we can support each other as African peoples and lift each other up. And that's part of the reason why I went there. I don't know if you have any questions.
No, you right on the money. You right on the money. We're very proud of you too, little brother. Listen, what has been said, if any, about follow-up actions in support of the space, in support of the foundation?
There was a little talk. The IBW has an African diaspora roundtable every quarter. They didn't really go into. They said that they were still working with the people on the ground. Particularly, there's a one of the brothers in the family on the ground that is, I guess, raising funds. But I haven't heard a full update on it. Actually, I need to call Dr. Daniels to see what the progress is in terms of gathering the resources to build on that space.
And we can help. We'd be and remind him that we'd be more than willing to help with that. I want to just acknowledge because we didn't have, and I think I may have mentioned it at the beginning, but we absolutely need to do a follow up piece and bring in two women that I'm very proud of who were also on that delegation, and their young mothers trying to raise their children in struggle, right? And I'm talking about Monifa Bandeli, who's a child of the New African Independence Movement
Mhm.
and is a lead voice in movement for Black Lives, and Melina Abdullah, right,
Yeah,
who tried to, and I will say has rescued uh, the Black Lives Matter movement from the turmoil and the conflict that emerged when the money showed up in the George Floyd summer. She rescued the grassroots organization. It's now called Black Lives Matter Grassroots, and has attached some 52 chapters of Black Lives Matter chapters, led more often by family survivors, to bring that energy back
yeah,
to the
yes.
organized and coordinated space. So we
And
wanted
they
to,
were very strong presences on the trip. Uh, uh, Melina Abdullah, Monifa, and a partner, of course, Lumumba, Kim Poole, and our sister from Nebraska, Shamika Simpson of the Malcolm X Foundation
yes,
out in
yes,
Nebraska. We
yes.
those were sort of my brothers and sisters in arms are speaking for these young people. You know, a lot of times we get into spaces and the young voices and particularly the sister voices are not being heard or respected as much as they are. So those are my comrades in the trenches trying to make sure that we get these young folks. Well, some folks consider us young folks, but I got as much white hair on my chinny chin chin as you do. Say, I just shaved it, and definitely on my head. So we have to get past the whatever impasses are keeping our young people and our sisters from being heard fully, and work as African people because there's roles and leadership for elders. There's roles and leadership for those in that middle group. There's roles and leadership for young people to in our struggle. And there's no conflict. There should be no conflict because there's a role for all of us to play.
Ain't no revolution real if
Uh,
everybody ain't liberated.
that's
Straight
right.
up,
That's right.
straight up, right? Straight up. So I'm very proud of you representing us in the way you did. Shamika, by the way, we all had a chance to meet her. She came to the pilgrimage this year.
Yes, that's right. It was the same week. We had just got back
Right,
a day
right,
a
right.
day before the pilgrimage, and so that was her first time at the pilgrimage. Her and her daughter were here uh, for the pilgrimage, and I actually got to show them around New York a little bit. Showed them some of the spots related to Malcolm in Brooklyn and in Manhattan, in Harlem. So we had a good visit while they were here.
Now let's claim this also, because one of the things we're early, right? But there are spaces. We talked about Omaha. You and James talked about Omaha, the importance of Omaha. Shamika and the Malcolm X Memorial Foundation are right on the land on which Malcolm was born, and that is now black-owned land.
Hmm.
17 acres of black-owned land that makes up the Malcolm X Memorial Foundation. At some point next year, we want to do something called Spaces for Malcolm. We'll come back to the foundation that the family's trying to do in Grenada. We'll lift up what's happening in Nebraska. Malcolm's prison cell is a library now in that facility that a poet up in the Massachusetts area had facilitated. The house that Wilfred had just outside of Detroit, where Malcolm came to when he was got out of prison. That house is is being reclaimed, and so it's going to be turned into a library, community center, learning center, right? These spaces, right? That we need to claim and lift up, and we could also can always move forward in creating more spaces for Malcolm. Let's really try and figure out how to have those conversations next year. Now we, the hour's getting long. I want each of you to think about any important takeaways you want our audience to have as we wind down this conversation. Baba James, will come to you first, of course.
Well, it's good, Asukile, to hear your report. I've heard it before, but you always add a little more expansion to it each time you make the report on that extraordinary visit to Grenada. So people have to know. I think what I like to leave with people is, yes, we have to remember Malcolm. And all of these things people are doing with the historical sites and the homes, I could really give a damn. You could burn them all to the ground. Okay. Unless we're prepared to carry out struggle.
Yes, sir.
To carry out struggle. We ain't got to be big like Malcolm. On the block you live on, in the building you live in, fighting for justice for the tenants in your building, fighting for the integrity of the block you live on, fighting for the political precinct you live in, right? Fighting for the school down the block to teach our children appropriate and protect those children when they go to school. We got to bring it back to that. That Malcolm showed us how to be grassroots.
Yes, sir.
If anybody made that term grassroots worth something, it was Malcolm. He was an activist teacher. He was an activist organizer. He was an activist that would go on the site. He'd come to your city no matter who threatened to kill him, whether it was in the South, in the Caribbean, in Europe, in Africa. He was threatening all of those places. But he came to the people to loan his strength to whatever their struggle was and whatever the issues they were struggling around at that time. And so, yes, we need all of these historical markers. They're part of our teaching tools. They're part of our memory. And we can't lose our memory, but we can't get stuck there. I've seen a thing where the children of activists have become celebrities, but none of them have become activists, or very few of them have become activists or political activists. This has to change.
Yes, sir.
The general has fallen, step in his place and carry on the war.
Who's going to step up? That's right.
And we will remember the general. That's part of what motivates us to carry on the war. But we better carry on the war for freedom. On every level, from the most minute to the greatest level of expression of this war. This war won't be complete in any of our 3 lifetimes, but we are carrying a baton of struggle, and we'll carry it until we can't carry it anymore. We'll pass it off to the next generation. And I do agree with Brother Asukile that the elder leadership, and I've tried hard to work with the youth across the world, have to learn to work with the youth and work with the organizations, share information with them and be an advisor to them and be a resource for them. But if you don't make that connection, because we're in a world where the opposition deliberately divides you from your children. It divides you from the youth. That's part of their strategy. So we've got to overcome that.
Malcolm's story is a clear picture of that. You can't see a clear picture of that.
So we've got to overcome that strategy by coming wherever they call us to come, answering the phone, whatever they call us, give as much assistance and guidance and counseling as you can. And when you can physically be there to support the efforts they're carrying forth, then you do that. So my clothing is to project the Malcolm, you have to struggle to be like a Malcolm. Remember those little kids in that movie about Bill Cosby at the end, they all go, I'm Malcolm X, I'm Malcolm X, I'm Malcolm X. That's where we got to be.
Yes, sir. Brother Asukile, what say you? What are your takeaways that you want everybody to take away from this conversation?
Well, I am Malcolm X, so I definitely that segues into the 2 points that I want to make. So the first point is something that I've learned from my association with Dr. J and how he gives his analysis. of people, because a lot of times when we talk about people like Malcolm X or Dr. J or Professor Small, we talk about them as if they somehow were raised in this vacuum tube. No, these folks were groomed to be who they are. Brother Smalls has a deep, deep African village connection in South Carolina where he was groomed to be the man with the values, interests, and principles that he has. Dr. Jeffries was groomed by his mother Leola and his father Leonard Sr., but also by the Newark community to be the man who he is. So my first thing is for us, if we want our children, if we want a different picture for our children, if we want our children to have different values, interests, and principles that are pro life, pro African people, pro freedom and self determination, if we want them to be leaders, we have to be the ones to ingrain that into them. They will not just pop out and just be that on their own somehow miraculously. So we have to ingrain the values, interests, and principles of African people and the necessity, the requirement to do whatever you can do as an African person. Even as Dr. Clark used to say, even if you're a street sweeper, be the best street sweeper you can be for African people. We have to ingrain this into our children and make it clear to them that we are at war. uh, the second thing is I don't know if my screen is sharing, but a lot of times we talk about people, and so I wanted to so the young people that are listening to this can know who we are talking about this evening. We are talking about Malcolm's mom, Louise Langdon Norton Little, and her husband, who you see in the image here. Uh, this is one of the books that just popped up. I have another book about the three mothers that is out about her, and there are other books on. But there's at least two books about Betty Shabazz's life, and certainly there's 50 or more books on Malcolm X. So young people, and this is Louise, a picture of her as a younger woman, and I just wanted us to see. This is her with her niece, who was a caretaker.
Right.
Her later in life,
That's the
she was
background of her life.
released.
So she was released. Absolutely.
So I wanted them to see what she looked like to make it more real for them. These were real people, and many of the struggles that they go through or went through are the same struggles that we are going through right now. And our young people have to understand that until we are free, things like this, what happened to her, things like what happened to Malcolm, things that what happened to us. Zai, you got some tales, Brother Smalls, you have some tales, and I definitely have some tales. The things that happened to us are going to keep happening to African people until we are free and self-determination on our own land, and where we set the rules and we control the politics, the economics, and the culture. So I want to leave that message with our young people, because I'm getting older. I got what's that saying? They say I got more years behind me than I have in front of me. I'm still kind of young and good looking, but it ain't gonna be there forever. So we need to get these young people on board and help them understand that because there's so much stuff that they're being bombarded with. This talk about generational wealth and all of this nonsense. You cannot have generational, meaning going 2 or 3, 4, 5 generations when you don't control the system that the wealth is generated in. And this system has shown us, to folks in Crown Heights, to folks in the Bay Area, to folks down south, that you can acquire some property, but this system has things and it has regulations and processes in to take that property back from you as a Black person and destroy the communities that you're trying to build. So we have to be clear why it's necessary for us to be free and self-determination and have our own land or nation, or even if we're living in another country, we have to have our own systems like every other ethnic group has to maintain wealth in their community within the land or the nation that you're in if you don't control it. So we have to get serious. We can't as a single man or a single woman or a couple think that we're going to acquire some wealth and be able to pass it down to 2 or 3, 4, 5 or more generations because we don't control the processes. We have to become involved and create our own system within that system to deal and negotiate where we are, and also plan to have our own. That makes sense, yeah.
And we should also be prepared to defend it. And I'll end with this.
That's right. That's right. That's the biggest part.
I'll end with this note, and it's tied to Asada 2 points. Wednesday marks the 60th anniversary of the autobiography. For all of the flaws and the problems with Alex Haley, right, that autobiography is a continuum of the revolutionary slave narrative. Asada's autobiography comes right behind that in that same spirit. Malcolm's mother was also a part of an underground within the UNIA that often hid Mr. Garvey out. That's one thing that Dr. Carew definitely made plain to us before he put his book out, right? And of course, we know what happened when Asada made her ultimate contribution when she had to sacrifice, when she had to go underground. So you have to have the courage and the readiness to be prepared to defend whatever it is we seek to build and seek to have, because there's always somebody trying to take it from you from the other side. So for the spirit, courage, commitment of that amazing womb of fire that gave birth to Malcolm, for Malcolm's selflessness, supreme Iwa supreme character and courage, right? For all that we got from, we miss Asada dearly, right? And what she has represent in the continuum of that struggle, right? We say carry it on, as Asada would say, carry it all the way to freedom. And I would say by any means necessary. We want to thank everybody for joining us. Newark, October 29th is the anniversary of this autobiography. We'll be doing book giveaways of the autobiography to 2 programs of young folks who participated in the pilgrimage a couple years ago. Those young brothers who were dressed in white, right? They're 2 programs. We're going to address those programs this week with the autobiography. And of course, November 15th, Newark, hold that date. We'll be doing a tribute to Asada in real time at a space and time to be determined in a Mississippi Minute, right? The next Revolutionary Fourth Sunday will be on November 23rd. We're trying, it's our intention to do something around another piece on Black women, because that week is also the week of the International Day to Eliminate Violence Against Women, right? Malcolm was a defender and protector of the Black woman, right? So we're looking at if we can pull that together. And I'm just learning that one of the key voices that we wanted to build around may not be on hand, so we may have to pivot and do something else. But that isn't our intent. So hold November 23rd, same time, 7 p.m. for our next installment of Revolutionary Fourth Sundays, and we got a ways to go on this walk. Thank our guest, Baba James Small, and for Kuzaliwa again, sir. Happy birthday. Happy birthday again to our treasurer, Michael Ferguson, the son of Baba Herman Ferguson. And it's incredible to appreciate that we lose Asada the same day that we lose Baba Herman, right? You can't make that up. September 25th, right? And follow us on YouTube. One of these days, we're going to get our webpage brand new and updated so we can protect our Facebook page. It won't be arbitrarily taken down. We have a very international Facebook page, but right now it's down because we've been supporting Palestine and we've been supporting Burkina Faso and all that, and we're going to do that unapologetically. It will be back, and we will be back. We will see you in the whirlwind. Thank you, everybody. It was a good evening, and we appreciate you. All right.